the killer who disguised himself as a detective and investigated his own crimes. They always said he was the first to arrive, before the forensics team, before the sirens even stopped echoing down the street. Detective Conrad Vale had a reputation. Calm, precise, relentless. He walked into crime scenes like he'd already solved them, because in truth he had. The city feared a killer with no pattern. Young, old, rich, poor. The bodies came months apart, then days apart, then weeks without warning. Each scene spotless in its own way. Each victim left with one hand covering their own mouth, as if silenced by themselves, or by someone who knew how to stage silence. Vale took the lead in the investigation. He gave interviews. He reassured the public. He shook the hands of the grieving. And every time, his eyes scanned the room like a man searching for justice, when really he was just checking for mistakes, his own. At first, his colleagues admired him, then they envied him, then they feared him, because whenever a crime scene made no sense to them, Vale had the answer. Too fast, too clean, as if he wasn't solving the mystery, but remembering it. It would take 7 years, 23 bodies, and one rookie's gut feeling before the department realized the man they trusted most was the one holding the knife all along. There are killers who hide in the dark. And then there are killers who walk straight through the front door, wearing a badge. Detective Conrad Vale wasn't just investigating murder. He was guiding it, shaping it, curating it. Each scene he approached wasn't new to him. It was familiar, because he'd been there before, as the monster and the savior. For years he fooled everyone. He wasn't sloppy. He didn't get cocky. He wrote the rules of the investigation and then followed them publicly, while privately breaking them again and again. Every fingerprint he didn't find was one he never left. Every motive he dismissed was a mirror he refused to face. And no one asked questions, because why would they? He was the lead investigator, the expert, the face of justice, until one rookie started asking the wrong questions, until the case turned back toward him. And what the department uncovered wasn't just a betrayal. It was a long, cold ritual of murder, hiding in plain sight. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe for more chilling stories like this one. Leave a like if you enjoy psychological thrillers, and comment below what city and country are you watching from. We're building a global archive of the darkest minds ever uncovered. Now brace yourself, because Detective Conrad Vale is about to lead you right back to his own crimes. Chapter 1. He always arrived first. The first victim was found on a rainy Tuesday, middle-aged, accountant, divorced, nothing remarkable, except for the way his mouth was covered. His own hand placed over it like a self-inflicted silence. No forced entry, no defensive wounds, no witnesses. Just a neat, peaceful corpse in an otherwise undisturbed room. And Detective Conrad Vale was there before anyone else. He said he just happened to be in the area. He'd heard the call over dispatch. Standard protocol? No. But Vale had a reputation for being hands-on. His captain praised his initiative. Other officers envied his timing, but no one questioned it. Because who would suspect the detective that always showed up first? The crime scene team worked under his watchful eye. He pointed out details no one noticed. He found the trace of a boot print near the window, not left by the killer, but by a maintenance worker the day before. He eliminated false leads before they even formed. The team called him brilliant, but he wasn't solving the crime. He was covering it in real time. He took personal responsibility for the case. "Justice is personal," he told reporters. He shook the family's hands, made promises. He even paid for the funeral flowers, a gesture of kindness. Or was it guilt in disguise, because that hand covering the victim's mouth, it wasn't placed in panic. It was arranged, like a signature. Weeks passed. No leads, no suspects. But Vale provided updates, theories, leads that went nowhere, all plausible, all perfectly structured to stall without suspicion. Meanwhile, the case grew cold because Vale needed time to prepare the next one. The second body was found in a library restroom, same position, hand over the mouth, eyes open, staring into the corner of the stall. A cleaner found it and vomited on sight. Conrad Vale was on scene in less than 5 minutes. Déjà vu, he whispered to a colleague and smiled. Patterns emerged, but only to Vale, because he designed them. He started pushing the theory of a serial killer. The media ran with it, the public panicked, and Vale became the face of the hunt, giving interviews, offering insight, telling the world how the killer thinks, because the killer was him. At the station, other detectives noticed something off. Vale never took time off. He never left town. He never got angry, never raised his voice. Too calm, too clean. But that calmness was mistaken for professionalism, not the ice-cold control of a man watching his work from inside the system. He started leaving behind odd clues, nothing traceable, just enough to keep the investigation spinning. A red thread behind a cabinet, a half-burned matchstick near a vent, all carefully planted by the man tasked to find them. And each time the team made progress, Vale was there, nudging them forward or pulling them back, like a puppeteer tightening strings. No one saw it coming, not the coroner, not the captain, not the families of the dead, because Conrad Vale wasn't just good at hiding, he was brilliant at leading investigations, leading press conferences, leading suspicions away from himself. He didn't kill to escape justice. He killed to build it around him, and no one, not even the victims, ever saw his face behind the badge. Chapter 2. The rookie who started asking questions. Her name was Olivia Reeve, fresh out of Quantico. Sharp eyes, sharper memory. She didn't speak much at first. She listened, took notes no one asked her to take, watched every move, every word, especially when it came from Detective Conrad Vale. Her assignment was supposed to be temporary. Just observe, assist, learn. But she noticed something no one else did. The consistency of the victim's shoes. All were placed neatly beside the body, not kicked off, not scattered, arranged. Too precise to be a coincidence, too quiet to be discussed. She brought it up in a briefing. Vale smiled. Killers with OCD tendencies, not uncommon. And the team moved on. But Olivia didn't, because the report said something different. One victim had been found with no shoes at all. The photo showed them beside the bed. But the officer who arrived first said they weren't there. She reviewed the case files. Every report Vale touched had gaps, subtle phrasing changes, altered timestamps, small edits in digital logs. Not enough to raise alarms. But enough to change the shape of the truth. She started printing out copies, keeping originals, hiding her suspicion. Late one night, she stayed in the office alone. She ran the security logs from the last 2 years. A pattern emerged. Vale had accessed closed cases dozens of times, always at night, always alone, always crimes he had solved. Except now, she wondered if he had really solved them, or simply returned to admire his work. She confronted a senior detective. He waved her off. Vale's the reason half of us are still employed. Don't chase ghosts. But Olivia wasn't chasing. She was watching. And when Vale handed her a file the next day, she noticed his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Looking into old cases, Reeve?" he asked. Her spine stiffened. He knew. The next victim was found 2 days later. Same pose, same silence. But this time, a detail slipped. A blood smear on the windowsill. Partial fingerprint. Reeve cross-checked it before Vale could intercept. It matched no known database, but the partial had a scar pattern, almost identical to one she'd seen on Vale's right thumb. She didn't sleep that night. She opened every case Vale had closed, marked patterns, victims' last locations, and something terrifying emerged. The victims hadn't just been random. They had all at some point interacted with the police. Complaint calls, reports, minor arrests. They had trusted the system, and the system had chosen them. Reeve didn't go to internal affairs. Not yet. She needed proof, real proof. So she placed a tiny recorder under Vale's desk. Illegal, risky, but necessary. And what she captured 2 days later was worse than she imagined. Vale, whispering, "It's not the killing that's hard. It's waiting for the next mistake to clean." She had him, but she was alone. If she moved too soon, he'd vanish. If she waited too long, someone else would die. So Olivia Reeve did something bold. She created a fake crime scene, a trap, designed like all the others, but different in one specific way, and she waited to see who would arrive first. Chapter 3. The trap was set, but he knew it was a game. It looked perfect. An abandoned warehouse near the docks, dim lighting, broken glass. A mannequin posed like the previous victims, hand over mouth, lying still. Fake blood, staged clues. It mirrored every signature of the killer's known crimes, except this time, it was bait. Olivia Reeve watched from a hidden surveillance van. Microphones, cameras, a silent SWAT team waiting in the shadows. She'd crafted every detail with surgical precision, even left a folded shoe beside the body, just like he would. It was textbook, almost too perfect. And maybe that's why it failed. At 2:12 a.m., the warehouse door creaked open. Footsteps, slow, measured. But when they reviewed the footage later, they couldn't identify the figure. He wore gloves, a hat, a surgical mask, just enough to avoid detection. He didn't touch anything, he only looked. For exactly 47 seconds. Then he left. He knew. The trap didn't catch him, it amused him. The next morning, Olivia found an envelope on her desk. No stamp, no name. Inside, a Polaroid of her standing at the crime scene the day before. From above. From somewhere she didn't know had a vantage point. She froze. The message was clear. "I see you, Olivia." Her hands trembled, but she said nothing to the team. She couldn't prove the photo was from him. She couldn't even prove how it got there. Vale passed by her desk an hour later. "Rough night?" he asked. His eyes didn't blink. That night, he didn't go home. He went underground. To a second apartment, one no one knew about. Inside it was sterile. Plastic walls, drawings of his victims, diagrams of crime scenes, and in the center, a large whiteboard with one name circled in red, Reeve. He started studying her schedule, her coffee habits, the route she took home. He wasn't planning her death. He was testing her resolve. She was the first one who made him feel seen. And for a man who'd worn masks all his life, that feeling was dangerously addictive. He left another note, taped to the underside of her windshield. It read, "You missed a detail in the shoes. The left one is always slightly turned. You should pay closer attention." It wasn't a threat. It was a lesson. A teacher guiding his favorite student. At the next team meeting, Olivia looked directly at him. She smiled. He smiled back. For a moment, no one else existed. It wasn't about murder anymore. It was about control, a chess match behind every word. And now, the killer wasn't just hiding, he was playing, and she'd stepped onto the board. Olivia returned to the fake crime scene that night, alone. But something had changed. The mannequin was gone. In its place, a mirror. And written in lipstick, "Checkmate is boring, I prefer tension." This wasn't just a trap anymore, it was an invitation. The killer had seen her, and now he wanted her to see him. Chapter 4. Every crime scene was a message, but she had been reading it wrong. She returned to the files, all of them, printed, spread across her apartment floor like puzzle pieces. Victim photos, scene reports, coroner notes. But this time, Olivia wasn't looking for evidence. She was looking for intent. For language, for something beneath the crime, the hand over the mouth, always the right hand, the way the shoes were placed, left shoe slightly turned, curtains always closed, clock always stopped. She thought it was signature. It wasn't. It was structure. Every scene was composed like a sentence in a silent language she hadn't yet learned. She began charting the locations on a map. A pattern emerged, not geographical, but symbolic. The crime scenes formed a shape. At first, she thought it was random, but overlaid with a transit grid, it resembled the veins of the city. He was building something, not with bricks, but with fear and symmetry. Then she noticed the books. Each victim had a specific title nearby. One had Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, another Kafka's The Trial, another The Stranger by Camus. All were stories about guilt, justice, and identity. He wasn't just killing, he was curating. She cross-referenced the dates. Every murder occurred after a public failure in the justice system. A mistrial, an officer acquitted, a corrupt judge. The killings weren't random, they were corrections. He wasn't just playing detective, he believed he was building purer justice. Her skin crawled. She'd been chasing a psychopath, but what if he didn't see himself that way? What if in his mind he was the reformer, not evil, precise? A man who saw flaws in the system and cleaned them in blood. And she, unknowingly, had stepped into his script. That night a package arrived, no return address. Inside, a small antique mirror. On the back, a carved phrase, "You're learning, that's good. But are you watching or just looking?" It was intimate, personal, not a threat, an invitation to keep going. Olivia took another look at the victims. They weren't chosen at random. They had all benefited, directly or indirectly, from failures in justice. A wealthy man who escaped charges. A parole officer who ignored complaints. A defense lawyer who laughed at a victim's family, each one untouchable, until Vale touched them. She printed his old case files, ones he closed before the killings began. And there it was, the same patterns. Silence, clean scenes, but labeled accidental deaths, falls, overdoses, suicides, false labels, assigned by the very man who investigated them. She stared at her reflection in the mirror he sent. And for the first time, she whispered it out loud. He's not just hiding in the investigation. The investigation is the performance. This wasn't about murder, it was about storytelling. And now, she was part of the next chapter. Chapter 5. She confronted him without saying a word. Olivia waited until the hallway was empty. Her steps were silent on the concrete floor. She didn't knock. She just walked into the briefing room. Vale was alone, reviewing files. He looked up, calm as ever. "Agent Reeve, something on your mind?" She said nothing. She only stared at him, long enough for the silence to thicken, long enough to feel real. She placed a file on the table. No label, just a single photograph inside. The crime scene from the fake warehouse. The photo had been altered. A red circle drawn around the mannequin's left shoe, turned slightly inward, just like he taught her. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. And for a second, neither did he. Vale leaned back slowly. No panic. No defense. He studied her face like a chessboard. "You've got an eye for detail. That's rare." She didn't smile, didn't nod. She was past pleasantries. She just wanted to see if he'd flinch. He didn't. He reached for the file, turned it sideways, then upright again, like it mattered. "Is this part of your report?" She still didn't answer. She walked around the table, stood behind him, watched how he didn't tense up. No one innocent is that still. Then she spoke. 3 words. Soft, cold. "I see you." No threat, no accusation, just truth. And in that moment, something flickered in his expression. Not fear, recognition. Vale turned slowly in his chair. Their eyes locked. He smiled, genuinely for the first time. "Took you long enough." It wasn't a taunt. It was admiration, like a magician respecting the one person who found the trick. But he wasn't done performing yet. Not even close. He stood up, walked past her, close enough for her to feel his breath. "You'll need more than instincts, Olivia." And just like that, he left the room. No file, no confession, just the scent of aftershave and the sound of the door closing, soft as a whisper. Olivia stood still for several minutes, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of what just passed between them. She hadn't accused him, but she didn't need to. Now they both knew, and that changed everything. That night, her apartment was untouched. Her locks were fine, her windows locked. But the photo she'd left in the office, it was on her kitchen table. Same red circle, same silence. But now, a note scribbled on the back. "I see you too." From that moment on, the game became personal. Not about catching him, not about evidence. It was about breaking him, getting close enough to unravel the calm, close enough to make him slip. She'd already stepped into his world. Now she had to survive in it, without losing herself. Chapter 6. Every move she made. He had already predicted Olivia started working from home. She used burner phones, encrypted hard drives. She kept her evidence in 3 separate locations, none tied to her name. She stopped trusting the department, stopped trusting systems, because Vale wasn't just inside the case. He was inside the system itself. She reached out to an old Quantico contact, Agent Dyer. someone she could trust. Maybe. They agreed to meet at a park. No phones, just memo files. She told him everything. He listened carefully, and when she looked away for just a second, he was gone. That night, she found her front door unlocked. Nothing missing, no signs of entry. Just one thing had changed. Her living room light bulb had been replaced, a warmer tone, barely noticeable, except she never bought warm lights. He'd been inside, and he wanted her to know. She reviewed her surveillance footage. Blank, the entire day. Audio static, video distortion. Her cameras hadn't malfunctioned, they had been erased, precisely cleanly, as if the killer was now curating her life the way he curated death. She tested him. She created fake notes, false trails, left misleading clues on purpose. Within 2 days, those leads had been subtly corrected by others on the team. Vale was still ahead, still directing, and now she wasn't sure if she was chasing him or if she was being led somewhere. She turned off her phone, used burner SIMs. No searches, no messages, but a new email still appeared in her inbox. Subject line, "You don't need to hide." The body was empty, except for one sentence in white text on a white background. The mirror's always been the screen. Her paranoia grew. She stopped sleeping. She started seeing her own reflection move before she did. Every knock at the door made her freeze, not because she feared he would kill her, but because she feared he would reveal her, strip her logic down, make her one of his puzzles, and leave her alive, just broken. Then came the envelope, no name, no stamp. Inside, a photo of her father, taken 2 days ago, alive, smiling, standing outside a diner. She hadn't seen him in years, and yet Vale had found him, watched him, and never said a word until now. She panicked, called her father. No answer. Tried again, straight to voicemail. She drove 6 hours in the dark, heart racing, praying. When she arrived, her father opened the door, confused, unharmed. "Why are you here, Liv?" She couldn't explain. "Because how do you say, 'A man I can't arrest has found you just to hurt me without touching you'?" She sat in her car for an hour afterward, crying, shaking, because for all her training, she had been naive. She thought she could investigate him, but she was never in control. Not for a second. This wasn't a chess match. It was a maze built just for her. And the architect was smiling. Chapter 7. The city became his canvas, and she was just one brushstroke. At first, it felt like déjà vu, a flyer here, a torn poster there, random street art that seemed too curated, symbols from old crime scenes, colors used in the photos, phrases that only she would recognize, graffiti that spelled nothing until you read it backwards, and it said, "Still watching." She tried to warn the team. No one believed her. The captain said she was seeing ghosts. Internal Affairs flagged her behavior as erratic. A forced leave was suggested. She refused because she knew this wasn't paranoia. It was design. Public parks, bus stops, subway walls. Symbols started to repeat. A spiral carved into a bench. A blood-red X beneath a traffic camera. All subtle, all easy to dismiss. Unless you knew what to look for, and she knew because she'd seen them at every murder scene before anyone else did. He was building something, a narrative. But not just for her, for the city. The next crime wouldn't be hidden. It would be a performance, and the audience wouldn't know they were watching a murder until the curtain fell. She tried to warn local authorities. Bureaucracy got in the way. Coincidence. Urban noise. But Vale had trained her well to see beyond the surface, to read silence, and in that silence she found a message. Each symbol matched a letter. Together they spelled a time and place. Downtown, Thursday, noon. She went early, plain clothes, armed, alone. Crowds moved around her unaware, street performers, vendors, tourists, and then she saw him. Not Vale, but a man in a trench coat placing something under a bench. She moved, fast. The package was wrapped in brown paper, taped tightly. No wires, no timer, just a note, folded once, written in red ink. Not a bomb, just a distraction. The real performance is across the street. She turned, looked across the boulevard, a tall office building. And in the window, a silhouette, looking down at her still, arms behind the back, watching, and then it stepped back, slowly, and vanished. She ran. Security footage showed nothing. No one entered the floor that day. No records, no prints. But taped under the front desk in the lobby, another envelope. Inside, a sketch of her face, drawn in charcoal, framed by red spirals. At the bottom, one word: Muse. That night, Olivia didn't go home. She slept in the precinct, lights on. Because now, the case wasn't about stopping a killer. It was about understanding what kind of masterpiece he was trying to complete, and more importantly, how many brushstrokes he still needed before he considered it finished. Before he considered her finished. Chapter 8. She tried to set the rules, but he'd already rewritten the game. Olivia knew she couldn't fight him in the shadows anymore. He thrived there, watched from them, breathed through them, so she tried something different. She went to the media, anonymous tips, whispers to crime bloggers, carefully leaked files, patterns no one had ever dared publish. It worked at first. News anchors started asking questions. Could there be a serial killer within law enforcement? The public flinched. Protesters gathered outside the precinct. Anonymous Twitter threads exploded with theories, some ridiculous, some dangerously accurate. She watched it spread like fire, and for a brief moment, she thought she'd seized control. But the fire, it had been fed with gasoline he left behind. 2 days later, a podcast dropped. Anonymous source. Allegations against Olivia. Claims she was obsessed, unstable, fabricating evidence. Clips of her raising her voice. Edited calls. Missing context. Even a manipulated audio file of her whispering, "I'll bury him myself." It went viral. The comments were brutal. She's the killer. She's framing someone. She's insane. Her badge was suspended, pending review. Her apartment was searched. They found burner phones, unregistered drives. She'd collected them to hide from him. But now they were used to paint her as dangerous. Her own walls turned against her. He hadn't just predicted her moves, he'd built them into his trap. She screamed in the interrogation room, told them the truth, all of it, about Vale, about the messages, the graffiti, the mirror, the letters, the pattern. But to the investigators, it sounded like delusion. Then Vale walked in. Not in cuffs, not accused, just a consultant. He smiled gently, placed a hand on the table. Agent Reeve has been under immense pressure. Sometimes brilliance walks the line between genius and instability. He said it like a friend, like a mentor. And every word stabbed her in the gut. She was released, but not exonerated, suspended, alone. Every file she had was seized, her digital access revoked, even her own notes deleted. He'd erased her not from the system, but from the story. And in doing so, he remained exactly where he wanted, untouched. She paced her apartment for hours, lights off, phone dead, nothing left but one backup flash drive, hidden inside a fake candle. She plugged it into an offline laptop. The screen flickered, black for a moment. Then, an image appeared, her, sleeping, taken from inside the room, with a message in the corner. "I warned you. I don't like rules I didn't write." She vomited in the sink. Her hands shook. She wasn't just losing the case, she was losing her grip on reality, or worse. He was replacing it, one quiet piece at a time, and every step she took now echoed the feeling. You are inside his story, and he's not done with you yet. But she wasn't done either, because somewhere in all the chaos, one thing still held true. She saw him, really saw him, and that meant he was afraid of her. Even if he'd never admit it, she would break him, but not with force, with patience, with silence. With a mirror held steady long enough for him to see himself. Chapter 9. She went underground, and so did the bodies. Olivia vanished. No trace, no forwarding address, no phone signal, just an empty apartment and a badge on the floor. To the public, she snapped. To the bureau, she quit. But to him, it was a challenge, because if she disappeared, she could no longer be manipulated, and that made her dangerous. She found a room in a forgotten part of the city. Cash only, no ID, basement level. No cameras, no neighbors, just cold walls, one flickering bulb, and a stack of physical files. Everything she remembered, everything she wasn't supposed to have. She became a ghost, to hunt one. Meanwhile, the city grew quiet. No new messages, no new symbols, just silence. Too much silence. And then, the first body appeared. A man, 52, corporate lawyer, found hanging inside his locked office. Suicide, they said. But Olivia knew. It had started again. The second body came 2 days later. A parole officer. Car found burned, body dismembered, no leads, no motive, but the blood pattern on the wall, it formed a spiral, just like the one Vale once carved into a playground swing. She circled the date, underlined the word escalation. She mapped it all manually now, with pins and thread on her wall. No computers, no signals, no mistakes. And what she saw chilled her to the bone. The new victims weren't random. They were connected to her, all of them, people she once worked with. Spoke to, trusted. This wasn't just another cycle of murders, this was personal. Each victim was a message, not to the world, not to law enforcement, to her. He was drawing her back out, not because he needed her, but because the story was incomplete without her. She broke into a government building, used an old badge, stole the latest crime scene reports. They didn't match the press releases. Photos had been cropped, details omitted, evidence lost. Someone was cleaning up after him again. He still had people inside, still controlling the narrative. She found a pattern in the victim's hands. Each one had a finger broken. Always the same one, the index, deliberate, symbolic. And then it hit her, the index finger, the pointer. He was saying, "This is who you should be watching," and every finger pointed to herself. She stopped sleeping again. Her hair thinned, her skin turned pale, but she kept reading, connecting, building. And one night, inside a box of evidence from a 2-year-old case, she found something that didn't belong. A photo of her as a child, on a swing, and in the background, a man watching from a bench. Conrad Vale. Her breath left her body. He'd seen her long before she ever knew him, before she joined the bureau, before she became a detective. This wasn't about rivalry or justice. This was about a story that started long before she arrived at the first scene. And now the ending wasn't just written, it was waiting for her to walk into it. Chapter 10. The ending was already written, but she refused to follow the script. She walked into the precinct like a ghost resurrected. No badge, no clearance, no words, just eyes, cold, focused. Agents stared. Some backed away. She didn't care. She went straight to the evidence room, and when the guards stopped her, she handed them a single envelope. Inside, every file Vale had scrubbed, restored. Internal Affairs was waiting, so was the captain. And Vale, already inside, smiling, prepared. He stood when she entered. "Olivia, I thought you were gone." She sat, opened a laptop, pressed play. Surveillance footage, uncut, unedited, flooded the screen. Not of the crime scenes, of him, planting evidence, watching, smiling, unmasked. He didn't flinch, not yet. He looked at her with pride. "Took you long enough to get to the good part." But Olivia wasn't here to play anymore. She slid a second drive across the table. It contained recordings, his words from the fake crime scene, from her apartment, from the call to her father. Everything. "You were never just the killer," she said. "You were the storyteller. But now I'm the audience, and I reject the ending." Vale tilted his head, studying her like a rare painting. His expression didn't break. But for the first time, something shifted in his eyes. Tension. The captain opened the folder. The agents around the room stiffened. Fingerprints, voice matches, timelines, the puzzle complete, and every piece pointed to Conrad Vale. He turned toward Olivia. "You're still in my story." She leaned in. "Then let's burn the last chapter together." He lunged, fast, feral, but she was faster. She pinned his wrist with a steel baton she'd hidden in her coat. The room exploded into chaos. Agents restrained him. Vale laughed, a long, echoing laugh. "You can catch the monster, Olivia, but the myth, that never dies." He was dragged out in cuffs, but his eyes never left hers, as if trying to write one final page in her memory. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, and in that silence, something shattered. Not just his plan, not just his myth, but the hold he'd had over her mind for far too long. The trial was short, the evidence overwhelming. He never spoke in court, never defended himself. He just watched Olivia every time she entered the room, as if waiting to see if she'd crack, but she never did. And when the verdict came, life without parole, he finally looked away. Outside the courthouse, microphones swarmed her. Questions, flashes, accusations, praise. She said one thing. He thought he was writing the story, but he forgot one thing. Victims survive and survivors speak. Then she turned her back to the cameras and walked away. She moved to another city, changed her name, started teaching. Not law enforcement, not criminology, but storytelling, because in the end, that's what saved her. Not violence, not vengeance, narrative. And every time a student asks her how to end a story, she smiles. You end it where the monster has no voice left. Some monsters die in silence, not with screams, not with blood, but with the sound of their story collapsing, unheard. Vale built a masterpiece in his mind, a symphony of manipulation, murder, and myth. And for a long time, the world listened. Until someone stood up and refused to follow the script. Olivia Reeve walked through the fire. She lost her career, her sanity, her identity, But she never lost her clarity, because in the end, she understood something that he never could. Power doesn't come from fear. It comes from truth. And the most dangerous thing you can do to a storyteller like Vale is take away his audience. Now he sits alone. No voice, no stage, just silence. And her? She moved on. She doesn't look back. Because she knows there will always be another story, another shadow, another mind ready to twist the world into something dark. But next time, she'll be watching, and she won't blink.